I talk to her every Sunday morning. I know she can't hear me anymore, but I come to her grave anyway. It's been 3 years since Margaret passed, and still, every weekend, I find myself here at Oak Hill Cemetery with 2 cups of coffee, one for me, one for the empty space beside her headstone where I sit. This particular Sunday in early November was cold. The Virginia autumn had stripped most of the leaves from the oak trees, and I could see my breath in the morning air. I set Margaret's coffee down like I always do, in the same spot, and I told her about my week, about how our grandson Lucas had made the soccer team, about the new Italian restaurant that opened downtown that she would have loved, about the small, ordinary things that make up a life. But I didn't tell her what was really weighing on me. Not yet. I wasn't ready to say it out loud, even to her. I'm 68 years old. I worked as an accountant for 42 years. Numbers, spreadsheets, tax codes. My mind is sharp. My body is still strong enough to mow my own lawn and fix my own roof. I live alone in the house Margaret and I bought 30 years ago, a modest colonial on Maple Street with a blue door she painted herself. I cook my own meals. I manage my own finances. I am not a burden to anyone, but my daughter-in-law wants everyone to believe that I am. Her name is Victoria. She married my son Daniel 7 years ago, and from the beginning, something about her set my teeth on edge. She was polished, ambitious, always perfectly dressed, a corporate lawyer who spoke in that clipped, efficient way that made every conversation feel like a negotiation. Margaret had noticed it too. She doesn't look at Daniel the way you should look at someone you love, Margaret had whispered to me once at their wedding reception. She looks at him like he's a resume item. I'd laughed it off then, told her she was being overly protective. But Margaret had good instincts about people. She always had. Daniel is a surgeon, cardiovascular, top of his field. He works 80-hour weeks at the hospital. He's brilliant, dedicated, and completely blind to what happens in his own home. He has 2 beautiful children, Emma, who just turned 10 and has her grandmother's kind eyes, and Lucas, 7 years old and full of endless energy. I see the kids every week. Sunday dinners at their house, usually. Victoria always greets me with a smile that doesn't reach her eyes and a comment about how I'm looking tired or confused. Little things, subtle things. "Did you forget we changed dinner to 6 o'clock, not 5? She'd say sweetly, even though no one had told me about any change. "You already told us that story last week, Dad," Daniel would say gently, even though I knew I hadn't. It started about 6 months ago. Small incidents, easily dismissed, but they were adding up. The previous Sunday, I'd arrived at their house to find Victoria in the kitchen with a woman I didn't recognize, someone she introduced as a friend from the neighborhood. They were having coffee, and Victoria was showing her around the house with an odd, proprietary air. When I asked who she was later, Victoria waved it off. "Just a friend, Dad," she said, using that term she'd started calling me even though I'd never asked her to. "You probably don't remember, but she visited last month too." I remembered no such visit. That was when I started paying closer attention. The incident that changed everything happened on a Wednesday afternoon. I'd driven over to their house to drop off a birthday present for Emma. Her party was that weekend. No one answered the front door, but I could hear Victoria's voice coming from the back patio. The side gate was open, so I walked around. I was about to call out to her when I heard what she was saying. She was on her phone, pacing back and forth on the deck, and her voice had that sharp, business-like quality she used when she was working. "The timeline is perfect," she was saying. "He's showing clear signs of decline. We've documented multiple incidents, forgetting conversations, confusion about times and dates, repeating himself. Dr. Patterson will back us up on the evaluation." I froze behind the corner of the house. "I know it sounds cold, but this is the right move," Victoria continued. "Daniel works too much to notice what's really going on, and the kids are too young to understand. Once we get the competency hearing, we can make the necessary decisions. The house alone is worth at least $700,000, and his investment accounts, well, Let's just say it makes more sense to move those assets into a trust we can manage now rather than wait. My heart was pounding so hard I thought she might hear it. Memory care facilities are expensive, but we won't need anything premium, she said with a cold laugh. He won't know the difference anyway. The key is moving quickly before he realizes what's happening or talks to a lawyer. Yes, Thanksgiving weekend. Daniel will be home, we'll have the whole family there. We'll present it as a caring intervention, get him to sign the papers while everyone's feeling emotional and grateful. By Christmas, it'll all be settled. She paused, listening to whoever was on the other end. I already spoke to Richard about the legal paperwork, she said. Richard, her colleague, a fellow lawyer at her firm. He's drawing up the power of attorney and the trust documents now. We just need signatures. No, I'm not worried about Daniel objecting. He'll see it as taking care of his father. He won't question me. I backed away slowly, my hands shaking. I made it to my car and sat there for 10 minutes, trying to process what I'd just heard. My daughter-in-law was planning to have me declared mentally incompetent. She was going to take my home, my savings, everything I'd worked my entire life to build. She was going to put me in a facility and control my assets. And she was going to do it in less than 3 weeks, using Thanksgiving dinner as her stage. I drove home in a daze. I sat in my kitchen, in the same chair where Margaret and I had shared thousands of meals, and I tried to think clearly through the rage and hurt. She was manufacturing evidence of my decline. The forgotten conversations, the confusion, the repetition, all of it was fabricated. She'd been setting this up for months, creating a narrative, probably coaching Daniel to see signs that didn't exist. And it was working. I'd noticed Daniel looking at me with concern lately, asking if I was feeling okay, suggesting maybe I should see a doctor for a checkup. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, to call Daniel and tell him everything. But I'm an accountant. I've spent 42 years dealing with evidence, documentation, proof. And I knew that without hard evidence, it would be her word against mine, the concerned daughter-in-law versus the elderly father-in-law who might be imagining things. So I made a decision. If Victoria wanted to see signs of mental decline, I would give her exactly what she wanted. I would play the role she'd written for me. And while she thought she was setting her trap, I would be setting mine. The next morning, I called a lawyer, not someone local, but an old college friend who practiced in Richmond. I explained the situation carefully, factually. He listened, and then gave me advice that made perfect sense. Document everything, he said. Get evidence of what she's really doing. Record conversations if Virginia is a one-party consent state, which it is. Keep a detailed journal with dates and times. And most importantly, get a comprehensive medical evaluation from an independent doctor, someone she doesn't know, proving you're mentally competent. I did all of that. I scheduled appointments with a geriatric specialist in Richmond, 2 hours away where Victoria couldn't possibly know. I took every cognitive test they offered: memory, reasoning, executive function. I scored in the superior range for my age group. The doctor wrote a detailed report and signed it in front of a notary. Then I went home and started playing my part. At Sunday dinner, I asked Emma about her soccer game, a game I'd already asked about. I watched Victoria's eyes light up. "Grandpa, you asked me that earlier, remember?" Emma said, confused. "Did I? Oh, I'm sorry, sweetheart. I must have forgotten." I let my voice sound uncertain, a little embarrassed. Victoria practically glowed. She made a point of mentioning it to Daniel later, her voice full of concern. "Your father asked Emma the same question 3 times tonight. I'm getting worried." I started doing small things, showing up 15 minutes early to scheduled events and acting confused about the time, pausing mid-sentence as if I'd lost my train of thought, calling Daniel by his childhood nickname, then correcting myself as if I'd forgotten he was an adult now. Every incident, Victoria documented. I could see her making notes on her phone, building her case, but I was documenting too. I'd purchased a small recording device, the kind that looks like a pen, and I carried it everywhere. I recorded Victoria's phone calls when I visited and she thought I was napping in the den. I recorded her coaching Daniel. Maybe you should talk to him about seeing a specialist, just to be safe. I know you're busy, but someone needs to watch out for him. I hired a private investigator, a professional, discreet man named James who'd done work for my accounting firm years ago. I asked him to look into Victoria's finances and her relationship with Richard, the lawyer. What he found was enlightening. Victoria had opened a separate bank account 6 months ago. She'd been making regular transfers, small amounts, nothing that would trigger alerts, but they added up to nearly $40,000 that Daniel knew nothing about. The account was in her name only. Richard wasn't just her colleague. James got photos of them having lunch together, dinner together, drinks at a hotel bar. Nothing definitively romantic, but enough to establish a pattern. They were close, very close. And most damning of all, Victoria had already contacted 3 memory care facilities, requesting pricing information and availability for a family member expected to need placement around the holidays. She'd been planning this for months. I organized everything into a folder: medical reports proving my competency, financial records showing my accounts and assets, recordings of Victoria's phone conversations about the plan, photographs of her meetings with Richard, bank statements showing her secret account, letters from the memory care facilities. The evidence was overwhelming. Now I just needed the right moment to present it. Thanksgiving was 2 weeks away. Victoria had already started setting the stage, suggesting we have a big family dinner at her house this year. Your dad should be there, she'd told Daniel. Who knows how many more Thanksgivings he'll be really present for. I accepted the invitation graciously. I even asked, in a slightly confused tone, if I should bring anything. Just yourself, Dad, she'd said sweetly. That's all we need. I spent those 2 weeks carefully playing my role. I called Daniel and forgot I'd called him. I asked Victoria the same question twice in one conversation. I showed up at their house a day early for a planned visit, acting surprised when no one was expecting me. I could see Victoria's confidence growing. She thought it was working. She thought I was deteriorating right on schedule. The Monday before Thanksgiving, I overheard another phone call. She'd stopped being careful about where she talked. She thought I was too far gone to understand anyway. Everything's ready, she told Richard. I'll present the care plan during dessert. We'll frame it as a loving family decision. I've got Daniel primed to agree, and the kids are young enough that they won't interfere. Once we get the signatures, you can file the paperwork first thing Friday morning. What about the house? Richard asked. I could hear his voice faintly through the phone. We'll list it in January. I've already talked to a real estate agent. With the market right now, we should get asking price. Easy. That's $700,000 split between the trust account and other expenses. She meant her pocket. I knew it. Richard knew it. She was going to steal half my assets under the guise of managing them for my care. I went home that night and finalized my own plans. I called Daniel's colleague from the hospital, Dr. Sarah Chen, who I'd met several times at hospital events. I explained that I needed to discuss a sensitive family matter and asked if she'd be willing to attend Thanksgiving dinner as my guest. She was surprised but agreed when I told her it involved my medical care. I called my lawyer friend in Richmond and asked him to be available by phone on Thanksgiving evening. And I called James, the private investigator, and asked him to compile everything we had into a presentation, something clear, undeniable, that could be shown on a TV screen. Thanksgiving Day arrived cold and clear. I drove to Daniel and Victoria's house at exactly 4 o'clock. As invited, I dressed carefully, pressed khakis, a sweater Margaret had given me, my good shoes. I wanted to look like myself, not like the confused old man Victoria was expecting. Dr. Chen arrived separately, as we'd arranged. I introduced her to everyone as a friend from the hospital community who I'd invited since I didn't like being the only non-family member at dinner. Victoria's smile was strained, but she couldn't object without seeming rude. The house smelled like roasted turkey and sage stuffing. Emma and Lucas were excited, running around showing me their school projects. Daniel was in a good mood, relaxed for once, actually home for a holiday. Victoria was playing the perfect hostess, warm and welcoming to everyone. We sat down to dinner, all of us around the large dining table. Turkey, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, rolls. Victoria had outdone herself. I had to admit, everything looked beautiful. The conversation was pleasant. Daniel talked about a successful surgery he'd performed. Emma told us about her role in the school play. Lucas demonstrated his new ability to recite all the state capitals in alphabetical order. I played along, asking questions, laughing at the right moments. But I also made sure to do small things, asking Emma about the play twice, pausing mid-sentence as if confused, calling Lucas Luke and then correcting myself uncertainly. I could see Victoria watching me, satisfaction in her eyes. Everything was going according to her plan. We finished the main course and Victoria brought out pie, pumpkin, and apple with whipped cream. Everyone was full and happy. Daniel leaned back in his chair, contentment on his face. That's when Victoria made her move. "Before we dig into dessert," she said, her voice taking on a serious tone, "I think we need to talk about something important. As a family." Daniel looked up, surprised. "What's wrong?" Victoria reached over and took my hand, her touch gentle and false. "It's about your father," she said softly. "I know this is hard to talk about, especially on a holiday, but we can't ignore what's been happening." "What do you mean?" Daniel asked, his brow furrowing. "Your dad has been showing signs of memory problems," Victoria said carefully. "Forgetting conversations, repeating questions, confusion about times and dates. I've been documenting it because I was concerned, and I think it's time we address it." Daniel looked at me, worry flooding his face. "Dad, is that true? Are you having memory issues?" This was my moment. I could have revealed everything right then, but I wanted her to commit fully, to show Daniel exactly who she was. So I played the role one last time. I don't know," I said, letting my voice waver. "Maybe? I do feel confused sometimes." Victoria squeezed my hand. "It's okay to admit it. There's no shame in getting older. We just want to make sure you're taken care of." She pulled out a folder, printed documents, official-looking papers. "I've been researching options, and there are some wonderful memory care facilities nearby. Places where you'd have round-the-clock support, medical supervision, activities designed for people with cognitive decline." "Memory care?" Daniel said, shocked. "You think Dad needs to be in a facility?" "I think we need to consider all options," Victoria said smoothly. "And there are some legal steps we should take too, just to protect him. Power of attorney, a trust for his assets so they're managed properly." She slid the papers across the table toward me. "I had our lawyer friend Richard draw these up. If you just sign here, we can make sure everything's handled correctly." Dr. Chen, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. "I'm sorry, but this seems quite sudden. Has he had a formal medical evaluation?" Victoria turned to her, her smile cool. "This is really a family matter. I'm a neurologist," Dr. Chen said calmly. "And from my observations this evening, I haven't seen any signs of cognitive impairment." Victoria's expression hardened. "With all due respect, you've known him for a few hours. I've been watching this decline for months. Then you won't mind if we look at some additional information," I said quietly. Everyone turned to look at me. My voice was different now, clear, strong, nothing uncertain about it. "What additional information?" Daniel asked. I stood up and walked to the living room, where I'd hidden my laptop in my coat bag. I brought it back to the table and connected it to their TV screen. "I think everyone should see what's really been going on," I said. Victoria's face went pale. "What are you doing?" I opened the first file, the medical reports from my evaluation in Richmond. They appeared on the big screen, clear and official. "These are comprehensive cognitive tests from 3 weeks ago," I explained. "Memory, reasoning, executive function, all superior for my age group. I'm not declining, Victoria. I never was." "I don't understand," Daniel started. "Let me show you," I said, and I opened the next file. It was a recording. Victoria's voice filled the room. The timeline is perfect. He's showing clear signs of decline. We've documented multiple incidents. I watched Daniel's face as he listened to his wife detailing her plan to have me declared incompetent, to take my assets, to put me in a facility I didn't need. Once we get the competency hearing, we can make the necessary decisions. The house alone is worth at least $700,000. Emma and Lucas were confused, looking between their parents. Victoria had stood up, her face white with rage and panic. "Turn that off," she hissed. "Not yet," I said calmly. I showed them the bank statements, her secret account, the $40,000 she'd siphoned away. I showed them the photographs of her meetings with Richard. I showed them the emails to memory care facilities, dated months before I'd shown any supposed symptoms. Daniel sat frozen, staring at the screen like he couldn't process what he was seeing. "You've been faking?" he whispered, looking at me. "No," I said gently. "She's been faking, creating incidents, coaching you to see decline that didn't exist. I just played along once I discovered what she was planning. Every confused moment, every forgotten conversation, I was documenting her documentation. I pulled out the legal papers she'd tried to get me to sign and set them on the table. These would have given her complete control of my finances and allowed her to institutionalize me against my will. And this, I indicated the evidence on the screen, was elder abuse, financial exploitation, fraud. Victoria's carefully constructed facade cracked completely. "You manipulative old bastard," she snarled. "You think you're so clever." "I think I'm protecting myself and my family," I said quietly, "including my son, who deserves to know who he married." Daniel finally found his voice. "Get out," he said to Victoria. "What?" "Get out of this house." His voice was shaking with fury. "Right now. Daniel, you're being ridiculous. This is our home. Get out," he roared, standing up so fast his chair fell backward. Emma started crying. Lucas looked terrified. Dr. Chen quietly moved to comfort the children while Daniel and Victoria faced off. "We're going to discuss this calmly," Victoria tried. "There's nothing to discuss," Daniel said, his voice deadly quiet now. "I just watched evidence of you planning to steal from my father and institutionalize him unnecessarily. That's not a misunderstanding. That's not a mistake. That's criminal." He pulled out his phone. "You have 10 minutes to pack a bag and leave before I call the police." Victoria looked at me, her eyes full of venom. "This isn't over." "Yes," I said calmly, "it is. I have copies of everything. My lawyer has copies. If you try to fight this, it all becomes public record. Every recording, every document, every plan you made to defraud me. Do you really want that?" She grabbed her purse and stormed out. We heard her upstairs, slamming drawers, throwing things into a bag. 5 minutes later, she was gone. The house was very quiet after she left. Daniel sank into his chair, his head in his hands. Emma and Lucas clung to Dr. Chen, still confused and scared. I turned off the TV and put my laptop away. "Dad," Daniel finally said, his voice broken. "I'm so sorry. I should have seen. I should have questioned." "You trusted your wife," I said gently. "That's not wrong. She was very good at manipulation. I sent you to her," he said, looking up at me with tears in his eyes. "Every time you seemed confused, I told myself it was normal aging. I believed her. She's a lawyer," I said. "She knows how to build a case, how to present evidence. She almost succeeded." Dr. Chen spoke up quietly. "Your father's medical evaluations are solid. If this goes to court, there's no question of his competency." "It's going to court," Daniel said firmly. "Financial fraud, attempted elder abuse, exploitation. I want her prosecuted." "We'll see," I said. I was tired suddenly, the adrenaline draining away. Right now, I think these kids need some explanations and reassurance. We spent the next hour doing just that. Dr. Chen, bless her, helped explain in terms Emma and Lucas could understand that sometimes grown-ups make bad choices, that Grandpa was okay, that their dad loved them and would take care of them. Eventually, Dr. Chen said goodnight, Call me if you need anything, she told Daniel. And your father, I'm glad I could be here. After she left, Daniel, the kids, and I sat together in the living room. Lucas fell asleep against my shoulder. Emma held my hand. What happens now? Daniel asked quietly. Now we figure it out, I said. The lawyers will handle Victoria. You'll handle the divorce. And we'll all move forward. I want you to come live here, Daniel said suddenly. Not in a facility here, with us. I should have been paying more attention anyway. I want my kids to know their grandfather. Let's not make decisions tonight, I said gently. We're all exhausted and emotional, but the truth was, the idea warmed something in me. This house, with these children, with my son who finally saw clearly again. It felt like the beginning of something new. 3 weeks later, Victoria was served with divorce papers and a lawsuit for attempted financial fraud. Her law firm quietly let her go when the details came to light. Richard, her colleague, lawyered up immediately and distanced himself from the whole situation. I never pressed criminal charges. My lawyer friend advised that the civil suit and the divorce would be punishment enough, and dragging it through criminal court would be hard on the kids. Victoria settled quickly, agreeing to a divorce with minimal assets and no custody beyond supervised visitation. Daniel and I started having dinner together every Sunday again, at his house. I helped Emma with her homework. I went to Lucas's soccer games. I was part of their daily life in a way I hadn't been before. One Sunday morning in December, I drove to Oak Hill Cemetery with 2 cups of coffee. I sat beside Margaret's headstone and told her everything that had happened. You were right about her, I said to the cold granite. You always had good instincts. I wish you were here to see how it turned out, but I think you'd be proud. I protected our family just like you would have done. The winter sun was pale through the bare trees. I sipped my coffee and sat in the quiet, feeling the weight of the last few months finally lifting. I'm okay, I told her. We're all going to be okay. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it.